Now we want to explore some of the projects and programs that are developing ideas on with specific goals. The first thing we'll do is I'll call on the presenters to introduce themselves and their topic in 2 minutes, and then we'll have, after those are completed, we'll have a half-hour session where you can go and talk to each of these presenters and explore their project. So I'll call upon Glenys Jones from Tasmania Wildlife and Parks to present on her work.
It makes good sense to monitor and evaluate management effectiveness because we all need to know what's working and what's not. Over the past 25 years, the Tasmanian Parks and Wildlife Service has made considerable progress in developing practical, evidence-based methods for evaluating and reporting on management effectiveness for Tasmania's national parks and reserves. Based on our experience and observations of other systems, we've come to understand that there are 4 critical success factors for monitoring and evaluation systems to be useful and used. And these are that our monitoring and reporting systems need to be relevant, reliable, accessible, and resilient. Relevant to key stakeholders, including reserve managers, decision makers, funders, experts, and the broader community. Reliable, evidence-based, and founded in good science. Accessible, with the findings of monitoring and evaluation reported online. And resilient, because we who work in government departments are not strangers to change. Changes in staff, organisational restructures, changes in government, changes in funding environments. This is our adaptive management process that we have developed, are implementing and progressively institutionalising. Now, the great big missing link in most management systems is the monitoring, evaluation and reporting component of the adaptive management cycle. So how have we gone about making this work in practice? We integrate monitoring and evaluation into our management plans, and we have examples of our management plans on the table near the front door. And we report on the effectiveness of management at a range of scales. And once again, we have examples of our products on the display table. So we believe Tasmania's monitoring and reporting system marks a significant step forward because it is outcomes focused, evidence-based, transparent to all interested parties, operationally practical and scalable, aligned with our formal responsibilities for reserve management and stakeholder identified needs for performance information. It addresses different reporting scales and it's integrated into organisational systems, plans and processes, and our system is well suited to government and fosters organisational learning. Please come along and have a look at our samples, our products, and have a chat. And remember, make monitoring relevant, reliable, accessible, and resilient. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenys. I'd like to call Rachel Peterson from World Resources Institute to talk about Global Forest Watch.
Hello everyone, I'm Rachel Peterson from the World Resources Institute, and I'd like to introduce Global Forest Watch, an online dynamic forest monitoring and alert system that we've launched in February of this year with over 40 partners. At Global Forest Watch, we believe that data, and particularly open data, is a critical input to make timely, relevant decisions about how we manage the landscapes of the world. But unfortunately for many of us who need critical information on forests, we have to rely on reports like these, often written by institutions like my own, that are sometimes hundreds or thousands of pages in length, and by the time they're published are out of date, or the data provided in them is not easily analyzed or accessible for decision makers. And I'd like to contrast this with the world of finance and business, where anyone from a CEO from a Fortune 500 company to an individual managing her investments has access to real-time data updated almost by the minute for thousands of companies in order to make timely, relevant decisions about your finances. So this is sort of the concept behind Global Forest Watch, is radical transparency around forest information. And we make complex data from multiple sources easily to use and accessible to a number of forest stakeholders, including companies, governments, and civil society. So how do we do this? Well, we combine the power of satellite imagery, cloud computing, crowdsourcing, and open data to give the most timely picture of forests ever provided. And we've done this with over 40 partners, including tech giants like Google and Esri, as well as research institutions like CIAT, the Woods Hole Research Center, and Amazon in Brazil. So I don't have a lot of time today, but on the website itself, on the platform, you have access to satellite drive information on forest loss and gain, forest alerting systems that are updated as frequently as 16 days, as well as other contextual information on indigenous territories, protected areas, and forest use concessions like mining, oil palm, and logging. So the power of the platform really comes when you combine these data sets, such as shown here. You see the Matt Hansen Google 30-meter resolution forest loss data set, juxtaposed with indigenous territories in Brazil. So you can actually assess the effectiveness of indigenous territories in this case, which are also Category 6 IUCN areas, in resisting deforestation. Of course, all this data is great, but we want to see it actually used on the ground for action. And one way we started to do this is partnering with the Indonesian government to reduce the response time to active fire. So every time we get an alert from NASA about an active fire, we actually partner with high-resolution satellite imagery providers like Digital Globe to give the Indonesian government a real-time picture of these fires as they happen. So we're really seeing how this information is put into action. So in terms of protected areas, we believe that Global Forest Watch can help do many different things, like early detection of potentially illegal activities, prioritizing resources for enforcement, and identifying gaps, risks, and connectivity issues. We're actually developing a suite of apps built on top of our data, so please come find myself or my colleague Eric Dinnerstein to talk about some of the work we're doing. Great, thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Now, Alexa Montefiore from the SMART Partnership will talk about the SMART.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard a little bit about the SMART approach in Jonathan's talk as well as in Woody's talk. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what SMART is and how we see it playing a role in monitoring outcomes. So SMART was developed by a consortium of organizations with the idea that a collaboration and a concerted approach to addressing one of the world's largest challenges can really help better effectively monitor issues such as illegal activities like poaching, like illegal logging. And SMART is a law enforcement monitoring system now with the idea that we want to expand into broader protected area management. We're already seeing this with the ability to collect ecological monitoring data, which we just launched here at the Congress. The idea of SMART Connect, which could connect all of these other integrated informations, real-time alerts, Global Forest Watch, for example. And so this is employed in a three-pronged approach. The first being this idea of adaptive management, so a constant cycle of information. This is really facilitated by the use of the SMART software. So SMART can collect this information that can better be utilized into your protected areas and expand it up so it can be at a national, regional, global scale. capacity building and implementation of the SMART approach, and then standards. So where are we now? I'd love to talk with more of you about what we're doing, where we're implementing, and to really this idea of this concerted approach, working together to ensure that information is coming in and we're all utilizing it to greatest effect. So it's being used in marine and terrestrial systems, and we're seeing it in about 120 protected areas with the idea that that will continue to scale up. So come and find me during the interactive demonstrations and I can discuss with you more and give you an idea of how smart the software actually works. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Now, Chris Gillies from the Nature Conservancy, formerly Earthwatch Institute, will introduce his work on the role of citizen science in biodiversity monitoring.
Thanks, Aaron, and sorry, I was formerly from Earthwatch, now Nature Conservancy, not that Earthwatch has been assumed the Nature Conservancy. I'm really here, I guess, just to represent the millions of people that have already collected biodiversity data or analysing biodiversity data. Earthwatch has been doing citizen science for about the last 40 years. And at the moment, we probably have 30 projects in protected areas using volunteers to collect biodiversity data. Just a quick snapshot, I guess, of many of the different activities that we already have, methodologies out there in the literature for how you can engage volunteers in biodiversity monitoring. And I think we've already touched on a few of these, so I'll keep moving on. How can you engage them? Certainly you can get them working for you in labs. Museums do this really well. You can set up the intense expeditions like an Earthwatch expedition as well. You can have set up trails in protected area parks. You can get them using online. And you can also get them using mobile gaming as well. And particularly for analysing a lot of the genetic data, the medical science guys have really honed in on that, and they are unfolding proteins and doing a whole lot of work there. So what I really wanted to mention though was, I guess citizen science for us can be seen as a really useful tool, and a tool that bridges us against the communication, the community engagement and education sectors. And collectively as ecologists, we often outsource this or mention it in our talks, but we don't actually do it. And citizen science really is the key tool that we can all use to engage those other sectors. I wanted to highlight though that it has many different outcomes, and for us to achieve those outcomes, we do have to have a multidisciplinary team. And the second thing is to note, like all tools, we have to understand the process. And the process really for the most effective citizen science programs that we have is really about, rather than pushing the science onto people, it's about understanding how people analyse information, how they view nature, and then really putting that into a scientific context and driving it back up. So it's enabling the public to use their own eyes, their own ears, and explain what they see in their own terms, framing that in a scientific context, and then working backwards. Those are the sorts of programs, I guess, that have the most effect and the most applicable use in the scientific context. So please come over and see me, and I can talk about citizen science in that next half hour. See you.
Thank you, Chris. After the break, we'll continue with the introductions. We have 10 more program projects to introduce. So please be back at 10:30. We shall continue. Okay, this is the work that myself and a team from OEH is involved, together with Margarita Dumas and Governor Brown from Parks Australia. We're exploring the biodiversity data sets in a region, south of Sydney, in the Jervis Bay region, where there's a park protected area managed by Parks Australia, and about 10 reserves managed by OEA, and lots of other land uses. So we will explore what we can do with the data collected on the various programs over the last 25 years to inform protected area management. I'll hand over to Margarita Dumas.
I was just going to introduce myself. My name is Margarita. I work for Parks Australia. We manage the Commonwealth Reserves in Australia. There's 7 terrestrial Commonwealth Reserves. One of those is Booderee National Park in the Jervis Bay region. Quite recently, we've been undertaking a review of all our long-term monitoring in all our parks. So as part of this, we were compiling really thorough metadata so we can make our monitoring data sets discoverable and accessible. Part of that project then was to review what was going on and do a bit of a gap analysis. We thought the EBV framework would be one way where we could categorise our data sets and have a review of what we were monitoring. Then with this collaboration with OEH, we thought it perfect to look at Booderee and how it fits into the wider Jervis Bay region, and look at whether there's any comparison in the EBVs that are being monitored within our park and with the OEH parks and outside of parks in the surrounding area. Hopefully then to integrate that data and see if we can look at trends across the wider region.
Thank you, Margarita. Now, Jörg Freyhoff from the German Integrative Centre of Biodiversity Research will introduce the Global Freshwater Biodiversity Atlas.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here. Now we have a slide. Great. So for a speedy presentation, 2 minutes, of course, is always a challenge, as you have seen. I cannot present you the Freshwater Atlas here within this short time. I just let you know that this exists, and you find it easily at atlas.freshwaterbiodiversity.eu. So go yourself there. This atlas was made up by several big organizations led by the FP7 EU-funded project BioFresh, and the aim is mostly to feature published or unpublished results on freshwater biodiversity, and you find no data there, but you can discover data on this atlas. So if you're a researcher, a modeler, or whatever, you could use information about freshwater biodiversity. You could go there and find out what is available in the world, globally, regionally, about freshwater biodiversity, various aspects, mostly from published papers. You have then a map and you have a text there. And I really wonder if this could not be a model for more. If this could not be a model also for biodiversity monitoring. Woody in the morning he correctly pointed out there is a need of an integrated global plan to network biodiversity observation and models. How to bring these things together, and of course to bring data together is virtually impossible because data are hardly made freely available. There is a progress in this field, but not too much. So the idea is maybe that GeoBond could coordinate an atlas where everybody who does biodiversity monitoring just put a dot inside and you click on it, and then you learn about this site, what's going on biodiversity monitoring, and we will make a table and maybe discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg. And now Hilly Hamilton from NatureServe will introduce Biodiversity Indicators Dashboard.
This morning we've heard so much about many different data sets that are already available, and we heard from David Keith about the importance of having consistent resources for biodiversity monitoring and having consistent access to personnel. in order to share that biodiversity information with managers who are not going to read these tomes, who are not going to necessarily read our papers, who are not going to look at 1,000-page reports, we have to begin to consume the information that we already have and visualize it and communicate it in ways that are instantly accessible to managers and decision makers that are not going to be reading our primary literature. So NatureServe, with support from the MacArthur Foundation and the participation of many of the biodiversity data providers in this audience and at this meeting, has undertaken the construction of a prototype biodiversity indicators dashboard. The idea is to help provide very easily understood information about the status and trends of biodiversity. It follows, it's focused right now as a prototype on 3 high biodiversity value areas in the world: the tropical Andes, the Great Lake regions of Africa, and the lower Mekong region. It follows the pressure state benefit response framework that we heard about already this morning for, as a framework for conveying indicator data. And it tries to analyze time series information about biodiversity at multiple spatial scales. We've conducted analyses to be able to disaggregate global data sets to the watershed scale, trying to emphasize the watershed as a very important unit of ecological and management. As a unit for management, the watershed is something that we would like to bring more attention to, and many of our global data sets can in fact be sort of downscaled or disaggregated to the watershed scale. As I mentioned, the biodiversity indicators dashboard only exists if we're consuming the data sets from many of our partners, such as BirdLife, IUCN, WCMC. In 3 days, there'll be a publication coming out in PLOS One about the biodiversity indicators dashboard. I invite you to join me a little bit later today for the interactive session, or tomorrow at the Protected Planet Pavilion at 11 a.m., where I'll be presenting the dashboard there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilly. Now, Peter Status from New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service, which is a part of OEH, will introduce the Wild Count program.
Thank you, Aaron. Wild Count is a broad-scale, multi-species fauna monitoring program. It's long-term. We're aiming for 10 years. We're about to enter our 4th year. We're looking at data deficiency, critical data deficiency in biodiversity information we have in New South Wales, in national parks. And we're focusing on common vertebrate medium-sized species. We're using camera traps, 300 camera traps across a study area of about 250,000 square kilometres, so that's big, about 12,000 trap lines. We've got 200 sites, 800 locations, and we generate about 270,000 photos per annum. We have a lot of information to get through. We're looking at the status and trend of these species over time. It's meant to integrate with other information systems for purposes of modelling and planning. And it's basically an early warning system, so we can already observe things like increases in pest species in certain locations. We have three years worth of data, and we build it on a scientifically robust methodology, which is currently focused on the protected area system, but we believe can be extrapolated to any tenure, probably any place if you're interested in the same types of targeted species. So please come and see me, Peter Stathis, and my colleague Natalie. We'll be over there, the left-hand side of the room, and we have a poster. I'd love to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now, Ernesto Escalante from CERNAP in Peru will introduce the integrated monitoring system of Manu National Park.
Gracias. Buenos días. Mi nombre es Ernesto Escalante y venimos a presentar el trabajo que se viene desarrollando en el Parque Nacional del Manu, el tema de monitoreo, para medir el tema de la gestión y las herramientas de fácil acceso.
I am going to speak on behalf of Ernesto in English. So I'm sorry, I am going to pass the slides very quick because we thought we had more time. So this is Manu National Park. It has more than 1.7 million hectares. And this monitoring system has 3 levels. One is measured by the Protected Area Service, and the other one is measured by local and international partners. And the third one, and the most important, is measured by the park guards, and it's more than 50% of the indicators are measured by the park guards. And it is based in their control and vigilance activities. It measures 2 big groups of conservation objects and threats. And as I was telling you, there are several organizations that are supporting this monitoring system, and this is why this is a low-cost monitoring system. So those are the conservation objects, and those the organizations that are supporting the measurement of the indicators from those species. And also there is one organization that is helping in consolidating the data and giving the results for the effective management of the protected area. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto and Alicia. Now, Bruce Jefferies will introduce the work on rapid biodiversity assessments, BioRap.
Kia ora, Bruce Jefferies from New Zealand, and I've just actually finished a 3.5-year assignment working for the Secretariat for the Pacific Regional Environment Program based in Apia, where we're working with the 22 island countries and states. We put together a BioRap, a rapid biodiversity survey process for the Pacific Islands, and the primary task of the BioRap was to identify high priority terrestrial and marine protected areas, hopefully contiguous. So we're drawing on the experience we've had in 3 Pacific Island countries, Samoa, the Republic of Nauru, and the Kingdom of Tonga. We've got a presentation that we can share at the table over here with a couple of our colleagues from the Pacific Islands, and we'll be looking at the BioRap process, followed by the ecosystem economic evaluations that we put underneath the BioRap. Then we look at marine and terrestrial spatial planning to follow down on that structure, and then working our way into site-based conservation management plan. So the medium-term objective that we're stressing is the establishment of national and regional networks of marine and terrestrial protected areas. So we're working on 1/3 of the planet, and we didn't want to give you yet another death by PowerPoint by showing slides at the start of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Grégoire Dubois from the European Commission Joint Research Centre will introduce the Digital Observatory for Protected Areas data.
Good morning, Grégoire Dubois. I will invite you for a minute to sit in the bench of my colleagues who from the European Commission on the 1st of January will have to spend $1 billion on biodiversity and development over the next 7 years. What will happen with this money? You will have to spread it over different areas. You will not have the time to think about exactly what you are going to do with this money. You will have hundreds of NGOs knocking on your door, thousands of reports coming on your desk, inviting you to fund this part because this one is more important than the one next door. So this is a bit the idea of the Digital Observatory for Protected Areas, to provide our colleagues in Brussels with the means to orient themselves in all this huge amount of information. The Digital Observatory for Protected Areas has been constructed around web services for us to develop interfaces for the decision makers, but also for you to use to develop your own application. We're using mainly existing information from reference centers like the WDPA from WCMC, IUCN Red List on remote sensing data. So fundamentally what we do, we work at the global scale, is to try to identify all the parks that have highest pressures, more unique ecological features, and more unique compositional stations, like threatened stations, endemic stations, so that we can identify those that are exposed to the highest pressures, richest, and with most ecological features, because these are the ones that will attract first our attention. You see here for Africa, we were spotting those that we thought were most important, and indeed those were those that were receiving most funding. So today I will focus only on one aspect, which is maybe the assessment. If you cannot make it, I have put leaflet on the table there. I will present you to the second version of the DOPA Explorer, which is assessing around 16,000 point areas, larger than 100 square kilometers at the global scale. And yeah, I'm looking forward to constructive and useful discussions. Thank you.
Very well. Now, David Koenig from Zoological Society of London will introduce ISA12, which you already have.
Or maybe not. Before I start, there you go. I'd like to thank Seven Technologies and Kenya Wildlife Service, who are project partners, and also Iridium, who are a key collaborator in this project. So we've heard a lot about Instant Wild before, but in essence, the main advantage of this system is it allows for the remote monitoring of protected areas. No longer will you be bound or restricted to areas that have a mobile phone network or that you can regularly access yourself to download your data. But this is not simply just another camera trap tool. The existing camera traps are great, but this system also has a modular design, so you can tailor it to your specific needs. For example, if you need to focus more on the poaching side of your protected area, there's the ability to build in other sensors, such as magnetic sensors or seismic sensors, and all of these connect wirelessly to a central satellite node, which can then be programmed to send you as much or as little data back as you want. For example, there's even the functionality within the satellite node to process your pictures to tell you whether you have human or non-human within them, so you can save having thousands and thousands of images that you don't necessarily want to receive. So the system is designed for covert operations, so you can conceal them, and most of the equipment is designed to be buried. So we have deployed these in a couple of locations already. In Antarctica, we've done 10-month deployment monitoring of daily penguins. So that just shows how remote you can really go with these cameras and get into really interesting life history data. And they've also been deployed in Kenya, and they have been arrested today using this software. And your other option is you can go down the public engagement tool, and I'd encourage you all to download the Instant Wild app on your smartphones. So with that, if you're interested to find out more and you want some more specifics on the technology, come and find me afterwards. We'll be down on this front table. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Brian McSherry from UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Centre will introduce the Aichi Targets Passport 2004.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I'm going to give a very short introduction to this Aichi Biodiversity Target Passport. As he was saying earlier on, with these big biodiversity targets, it's very important to be able to communicate very effectively the information that you have with them. So, without further ado, so this is going to be the third version that we demonstrated today in the very front here. It was launched at the Convention on Biological Diversity Convention Parties meeting in Korea there about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The first time it was done was in 2012. Most recently it's been linked to the GBO4, the Global Biodiversity Outlook 4 project. And it goes into the 20 different indicators that make up the Aichi Biodiversity Target. It does give information on the state of play today, background information on how those facts and figures were generated, and highlighting different organisations involved. Like all good indicators, it's on a smartphone these days. You can go to the web story here, or if you come to me, I've got a business card to give you some more information where you can download the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Last but not least, Wang Hao from Centre for Nature and Society at Peking University will introduce his work on management of protected areas and assessment.
Good morning, everyone. I'm from Peking University and Shanshui Conservation Center. In China, till 2012, a lot of nature reserves established. While continued the process of establishing new nature reserve, China started to evaluate the management. And in year 2009, China started to do the evaluation, but at that time mostly on management. And the outcome only at about 10%. Then we did a survey and we promote the results. Then the new TIS standard, it's raised the outcome score up to almost 56%, which created, due to China has over 2,700 nature reserve, and among them 400 nature reserve were well funded, which created a multi-million market every year. That's a very good opportunity for the people who do conservation who has a ecological background. Among them, we picked up 2 nature reserves. 2 model nature reserves belong to 2 systems. One is occupied almost 80% of China's nature reserve. Another is 10%. And these 2, we build a model here. We use the status, pressure, action, response, and we divide the nature reserve to different grades. And we can evaluate the habitat change, the monitoring effect, the species distribution, setting priority, and the monitoring species distribution over time. See, black panda is stable. And for each grade, we do the time series analysis of EVI, so we know whether the forest is getting better or not. And we also spot the pressure to find the right location that nature can do action about it. We have, if you want more about it, we're right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hal. That concludes the introductions. We've got until 11:20 to go around the room, speak to the various presenters, engage with them. We'll then get together at 11:20 for the panel discussion.